got equal footing. Old Faithful. Everyone's favourite map, because it's always the bloody same. Man, if you like equal footing, you like white bread, milk coffees, and not much else in life. Because it's the most plain Jane map. If Greeks was a map, we've got equal footing. Anyway, so guys, without further ado, we got game number 2 here in the Bronze League Heroes. Sorry, Spartan'S Showmatches, the Season 1 League. We got Carnage versus Eery. We got Eery here as the red Babylonians player. We got Carnage as the yellow Norse player. So Carnage has taken the opening game in this series with a shock overpass pick. Well, Eery, you're looking to settle the scores. This time playing Babylonian. Well, we played Babylonian last game against the Romans of Carnage, who's now had to switch to Norse. He's going for the fast barracks once again, but this time I think the map really favours this style of play. Eery can be really hyper-aggressive in Age 1 here, and Carnage can't sort of rely on the Age 2 and Bush style of play quite so easily, I don't think, because the rush distance is going to be slightly smaller. I mean, Norse, the scouts, the fact that you've got the 2 of them and one of them's ranged, does mean that you've probably got the best chance of actually just leapfrogging over spearman production in the wake of opponent fast spearing you. But in saying that, it is equal footing. This first spear is already extremely low. Eery is going to commit now. Going to pull the low spear away. Carnage is quick to try and trade blows here. Carnage is going to want to try and micro out this low villager. Eery's not going to want to follow it under the town centre. At the same time, this does eventually slow down Carnage's food gathering, because he's got all this walk time back. He's going to be going to a slower food source. Eery hasn't... Oh, sorry, Carnage hasn't picked hunting dogs, so Eery sort of hasn't really punished that upgrade as such, but just the fact that Carnage still has to go for berries, is going to lose the storehouse, and you know, the rest of this eco is pretty exposed still. Through all this, Eery going to start getting some gold so he can keep producing spears, but at the same time he's going to be able to get his Age 2 on the way with a bit of a blip in the spear production now. And he'll just look at scouting out around Carnage's base. Carnage is forced to try and keep scouting through all this as well, and use his melee scout to build the range scout, just sort of getting a bit of map intel he wasn't really able to take advantage of earlier. I mean, Norse does have the 2 scouts, but oftentimes you do still have to commit to using both of them to defend. So, throwing Axeman production already, while Eery's age up really only just starting now. Carnage's going to start chipping away at the longhouse. So I don't think he'll be able to get this, but at the same time, Eery can potentially force Carnage into having to try and repair it, put villages out of place, so on. But for now, he's just going to back off. But, you know, he would have seen the barracks, he definitely would have seen the throwing axemen, so... I didn't actually see the barracks placement, but, you know, I think he would have guessed as to where it is. Carnage going to add a stables now, so Carnage getting Spear Champ, going to be able to go mainly throwing axeman raider, but he want to add just enough spearmen that Eery can't just rely on Lancers and his own Spearmen. And so Carnage will be the one sort of producing a unit that's not really countering anything in the fights, whereas, you know, if Eerie's going for just Lancers and just Spears, and basically just produces that, you know, Raiders sort of really only going to be reliable in hit and run, and potentially tanking Lancers while Spears hit them. Carnage is also going to add an outpost, so it is going to offer him a bit of intel with Eerie's frequent run-bys with the Spears. So Carnage just want to get on this deer as well if he is looking to actually produce dogs behind this. And so, ooh, Carnage, nice save on the scout. Probably doesn't want to get dogs yet. I mean, they're cheap, but they are very squishy, so you don't really want to get them until you actually see Lancer production from your opponent. You know, if you make dogs before that, you've basically fucked up, because they're resources that if you wanted to raid, put them into Lancers, put them into Raiders. If you want to defend, put them into Infantry. And so Eery doing a great job of the mass melee early comp with just Lancers and the Spears, and he's going to be able to take out the outpost with Carnage only getting the single dog there as well. Ooh, and this is nice for Eery. Sorry. Really rough for Carnage. Nice for Eery, because that outpost gets sniped by Eery. The Lancers, great. Before throwing Axeman can actually get a critical mass to actually, you know, clean up the front line of Eery's. He's already able to start picking off some of Carnage's throwing Axemen, and ooh, unfortunately, that outpost that I said was in a great spot for the vision, unfortunately, very easy to take down, so Carnage has to put this one in a safer spot, and it doesn't really tell him about whether or not Eerie's actually camping this gold mine, because you sort of want to know if your opponent's camping what you're about to be on when you're in this sort of position in like a, you know, a Babylon versus Norse or a Romans versus Norse as the Norse player, or as the other civs facing Norse if you're playing as them, and you've got to be careful of what the Norse player is doing. But I mean, no one's going to put an outpost this close inside the base except a Norse player, because you won't get units to produce. But this is what I mean. Eery is going to park the Lancers up here until he wants to go for the run-by. Here we go. He's going to go for the run-by straight away. So, I mean, if the outpost was here, he'd have seen this come in. So, Carnage, a very slight mistake with the outpost placement. Like, if you had it right on the corner here, like I said, covers the gold mine, sort of covers a little bit more of this choke. Same time, it's not really mission critical. I think he only lost, I think he lost 2 low villages there. So 28 vills to 33, but there's also 3 ox carts, 4 ox carts. So what's that? 30 to 29. So 1 villager would have been picked off there. And Carnage, it's actually quite a way down in terms of population on Eery at the moment. And he's going to want to try and have one of these spearmen finish this off quickly if he can. Because this is sort of the difficult thing about Norse. If you're trying to play against one of the other early cavalry civs like Babylon, Persia, or Egypt, it can be quite difficult to maintain your military production while also defending against the cavalry raids. In the meanwhile, Eery's done a great job at fitting in the gardens here, because they are slightly more expensive than they used to be, and eco rates in general are a little bit slower. So I mean, getting them is great, because, you know, the game no longer really gives you as much free resources as it used to, but at the same time it's hard to actually fit them in while also really being able to keep pressure up from the get-go all game like Eery has been here. So he's even going to take out a longhouse. Not going to be able to take out a second. I do like this placement from Carnage though, because it's really kept Eery out of the gold. So Carnage with the Raiders. These guys are actually going to trade quite well against Lancers, because I mean there's dogs in the mix to snare Lancers, and it just means he doesn't have to get spears and throwing axemen en masse. He just really has to worry about the spearmen from Eery at the moment. So another barracks being added here for Eery. So those are the spearmen I was telling you about, but in saying that, Carnage can always add another barracks to add more throwing axemen to compensate. It'll be a real back and forth in terms of one-upping each other in terms of counter infantry, and then counter cavalry, then counter infantry, then counter cavalry in a matchup like this. So I really like that dynamic around the Age 2 in it, because like take Celts versus Egypt for instance, or even either of those Civs versus Norse. Most of the time Celts and Egypt are literally just printing counter infantry the whole fucking Age 2 until you go to Age 3. It's literally the best way to play the matchup, other than maybe a tiny handful of anti-range to pick off healers if you're playing against Celts or Egypt, but if you're playing against Norse, then you don't even worry about that. So I do find that Norse versus Babylon, Persia versus Babylon, and Persia versus Norse tend to sort of be the most interesting Age 2s in terms of the unit compositions. So Eery, sneaky Lancer here, but kind of just going to clean him up. And so Eery is up by 20 population at the moment, and he's still got that one villager advantage as well. Nothing major. I don't think any Civ will really crumble under the loss of a single villager at this point in the game, but at the same time, Eery's army is massive. As much as Carnage already has the War Dogs, he hasn't got a huge amount of them, and let's be honest, they aren't quite one population in terms of value, even if they're in this sort of situation. The snare is nice, but they are so squishy. So against Lancers, it's not really too different to them turning around and attacking a spearman. So Eery has to contend with the fact that Carnage has got this army still at home as well. There's some nice harass here from Carnage, taking out another house and retreating for the moment. He's going to add dog training. Yeah, boy. So Norse have actually just had a little bit of a nerf recently. The dogs aren't as strong as they were. Give me 2 seconds and I can tell you what happened. Or is it coming next patch? Snare. Oh yeah, they've had their snare reduced. So dogs have just had their snare reduced. It's nothing major. But even then it's a slight nerf. Raiders are more expensive now though. And throwing axemen are actually kitted out to be better against ranged. And slightly worse against infantry than they once were. And so Carnage trying to find the best angle on Eery, force the spears away from the rest of the army, if he can. Because then as long as his own spears can focus down Eery's lances, he can take the fight, but at the same time, if Eery can manage to get the spears in the mix, and then have the lancers attack over the top, because lancers actually have an attack range that regular infantry, regular melee units don't. It can be a really ugly fight. So Carnage is really trying to keep Eery busy here. I do like this defensive tower here from Eery, but at the same time, Carnage might be able to work away at a lot of his eco. But Eery seems to be able to hold here. He's got infinity lances at the moment, 25 lances. He's still got plenty of spears too, 30 spears. So Eerie's population growing in the midst of all this aggression from Carnage, and Carnage is going to get the barracks, but he's going to have to back out here. So I think Carnage is probably having to get slightly more value out of that than he did, because Carnage 51 to 56. Ooh, Eery has gone for a second TC at the moment, and he is going to start walling up off the left and the right side there. So Eerie's Vil count took a bit of a dent there, but at the same time, second town center's faster there. So even factoring in the ox carts, he's not really down in terms of Vils, but this is a really nice raid from Carnage. He's going to snipe all the gardens. Ooh, he just had to double back there slightly, and it is going to mean he loses 2 or 3 extra raiders. So that does suck a little bit for him, but at the same time, sniping the gardens does set Eery back a bit. So Eery responding in kind with a raid of his own, and Carnage doesn't have the population that Eery does at the moment. In saying that, the Norse composition, if Carnage is able to get all the way to 160 pop before Eery can get an age 3 composition, I think the Norse player does really have the advantage, especially because you can keep investing in dogs too on top of that. But just in terms of the value of the throwing axemen and the spears together. Ooh, and all these low raiders though, these guys, a bit of a cost for Carnage. They do now cost 80 resources instead of 75 apiece. So not quite the silver bullet for the Norse they once were, but at the same time still quite a versatile unit, even against this composition where you're fighting into a counter unit and a unit you trade neutrally against. The raiders, if they are absorbing the damage from the lances, I suppose it can be worthwhile for Carnage, and at the same time it really prevents Eery from actually just transitioning to a lot of ranges and just relying on Lancer Bowmen. So now Eery, age up's on the way. He's had to commit to it a little bit faster than Carnage, who instead, he's getting Temper now and he'll get Scale Mail and Shield Rim behind this. But probably before or just as he ages up. At the same time, Carnage struggling a little bit for gold, having to... Ooh, Eery nearly got this town center. I didn't see that. Just goes to show why I can't play at their level. I can't keep track of everything they do. So Longhouse's being picked off by Eery once again. He's moving out. Carnage, yep, just now having hit 160 pop, but at the same time Eery's sniped houses, has that age 3, and he'll be able to pick off this distant town center. Eery's own second town center is very secure compared to Carnage's. Eery has bought himself in as well, so he's really hunkered down with a very Age of Empires 4-like base layout, I'd say. Carnage with that greedy town center, but at the same time he can replace this one, and Eery still hasn't quite yet gotten to his third town center, so it's nothing too drastic for Carnage. He's picked off a lot of value with sniping all those cleaning up all those lances there. So sniping the town center, it is going to be a big swing for Eery, but at the same time Carnage is banking up a huge amount. He can honestly look at aging up here. It's just that he's sort of caught on the ropes trying to defend at the moment and trying to make sure he doesn't lose any more villages. Oh, in this town center, if he can save that, but at the same time... Oh no, he'll be able to clean this up. There's a stack of throwing axemen. There is only the spears there, so he doesn't want to waste those. If he can, he'll try and clean up a couple of Vils and the raiders. Just really keeping Carnage busy here. Delayed that town center for ages there. Not quite able to clean it up though. So Carnage really forced to chase Eery here. Once again, Eery, multi-pronged aggression, going to try and snipe some value to make up for the fact that he's lost these units behind enemy lines here. Carnage, age up on the way, and he's going to get wheelbarrow as well. Second town center's finished up once again for him. And so both our players, pretty much 160 pop. Eery at 69 vils to Carnage's 60. So a small gap, but nothing huge in that regard. So Carnage, melee armor and melee damage. Eery, melee damage and armor and age 3 melee damage. But he's had added in a bunch of raw guards as well, because he really needs something to deal with this composition. Something that can both trade well with the spears and eat shots from these throwing axemen, also tanking the raiders and the war dogs. Can't just rely on the lancers, because the spears and the dogs will be too difficult for them. Lancers now having champion as well means that Eery gets a huge amount of quick engagement damage. Raid attempt here by Eery, but I didn't need to actually go for this watch post, I think, because now he's going to lose the villager. In fact, she's going to try and fight everything instead of just running away. Man, Eery puts watch posts fucking everywhere. Like, that's just about inside his own market line, man. Why not have it up here? So Carnage, H3's kicked in. Eery's going to have chainmail just about finishing up, while Carnage, for now, is just stuck in H2 upgrades. Ooh, and I think just the fact that these guys are champion might be a little bit too much for this composition. There's not quite enough in the way of spears there to defend that. And, you know, once you get Lancer champ up against any spear other than the Persian spearman, you know, you probably want some cavalry assistance or some anti-cavalry ranged assistance. It's a nice raid here from Eery, but there's a big fight going on the center of the map. Carnage just tried to go for some more military buildings here. Eery's tried to go for a watch post, and it's a bloodbath, an absolute melee here. And not a single bow was purchased or strung or fired that day. Actually, no, I take that back. There was a pair of them. Still plenty of TAs here. At the same time, they bloody tickle the lancers, so these guys should be able to cut through all the spears, and Eery should be able to get a lot of value out of this. He's denying Carnage all of this farm eco, and I don't know why Carnage hasn't just put this around underneath the town center, because now he's going to have to try and replace farms under the TC to actually gather or clear this all out, and GG is called. Carnage taps out of game number 2.